Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Sunday. Hi to everyone online. Glad you're here. I'm Ted O'Toole, and this morning I would like to talk about a teaching that I have not always found easy, that I've never found easy in the past. Some of you know the song of the precious mere samadhi, and it ends like this. With practice hidden, function secretly, like a fool, like an idiot. Just to do this continuously is called the host within the host. And I never got that, host within the host. Didn't know what that was about. Had in my mind that there's this meaning of host in Christianity, which is about the Eucharist. And I thought maybe it was somehow connected with that, but it's not at all. And I finally got it. It came together and actually seems not that complicated. A little while ago, when I was reading from Cultivating the Empty Field, which is a book of Zen master Hongzhi's writings, translated by Taigen Dan Leighton, and I was reading a poem called The Four Guests and Hosts, and I was reading this with Evan Britzius, who many of you know. Sometimes when I meet with folks, we read books. And this one I've been reading with him very, very slowly and carefully. And we also have a lot of other things to talk about, so we don't always get to the book. So we've been working on this little book for 5 years now. And so you can say we've read it. You know, we've read this book. And I've also read the same book with another student. So we're close to the end. So over this time, 5 years, we've really kind of developed a common language. And so it's pretty easy for us to talk about this. And we read the poem together. It came together really nicely. So if this talk were a song, I would give a co-writing credit to Evan. And I also realized that actually this host and guest teaching is really helpful because it is yet another good way to talk about our practice. So for you students of Zen history, just a little bit of background. Taigen Dan Leighton says that this teaching originated with Linji Yishuan, who died in 867 in China. He was the founder of the Rinzai school. Hongzhi was born in 1091, so he was born a couple centuries after this host and guest doctrine first appeared. And I've used this book, Cultivating the Empty Field, in morning study group. I did a talk about a poem in it not too long ago, maybe a couple of months ago. And I'm really quite enamored of Hongzhi. He's just beautiful to read, and he really anticipated Dogen. So I feel he's very important in our lineage, in our way of doing things. So this poem has 4 divisions, which we will go through. They are the guest within the guest, the host within the guest within the host, and the host within the host. You can see why I was a little put off at first, right? So there are a lot of different ways in which we can think about what host and guest might mean. We can think of them as emptiness and form, host being emptiness and guest being form, or as interconnection and separation, or the universal and the particular, or the conventional and the ultimate. These are the 2 truths that are at the heart of Buddhist philosophy, that we have our everyday way of looking at things and a deeper way of looking at things in a more spiritual way. And that these 2 things are not different. But as humans, with our limitations, we see them from 2 different perspectives. And through practice, we can somehow reconcile these 2 things. And another way of thinking about this is big mind and small mind. A couple of weeks ago, I did a talk, and someone asked, now that you won't be doing as much administrative work after January 1st. Will we be seeing more of Big Ted? And I was delighted by the question. Sometimes I talk about Big Ted and Small Ted in my talks, particularly on retreats, I think. So there's Small Ted, he who views the world through the lens of his own needs and desires. And then there's Big Ted, he who is not coming from that self-centered place. So we'll see if Big Ted can make more of an appearance in coming years. It's kind of a two-way street. You know, I always appreciate it when people in interacting with me kind of look for that and kind of let that in. Can we communicate on maybe kind of a deeper level? Can we maybe allow for some silence and kind of get beyond idle conversation? I enjoy idle conversation sometimes, but sometimes you can use your time with someone very well if you can tune into those more subtle ways of relating. So it needs to be an interaction. I'll meet you as you are. Who do you want to be? So anyway, what really ended up helping me in thinking about host and guest was thinking about parental mind, which I really get. And being a parent is like being a host. And you don't have to be a parent to know this. There's a kind of mind we get when we're looking after other people. When we're really able to focus on their needs instead of our own, and there's something liberating about that. Because this is, at its heart, also about the Four Noble Truths. Because we are self-centered, because we are ruled by our desires, we suffer. And we can lessen our suffering by lessening our focus on our own needs. And when I say self-centered, I don't mean it as a judgment. I'm not saying, oh, we're such selfish people. Because, you know, we're all self-centered. We're all biologically wired for survival. We're biologically wired to put ourselves first and to go into a situation asking, how is this going to affect me, and how can I make this a good situation for myself? So our minds are constantly busy looking for that survival advantage. So we're kind of hardwired not to really see our interconnections with other things. And we tend to kind of discard things that are not about us. But parental mind, if you're taking care of a little child, you will do the fiercest thing. You will become so large in order to protect that child. And it brings you to a place of real selflessness. And that frame of mind is consistent with our Zen practice, I think. The radical thing, the astonishing thing that people in this room are onto is that you will be happier if, within reason, you set aside your narrow self-interest and you pursue the interest of the whole. You pursue the interest of the whole room, not just yourself. You'll be happier if you're not fighting the room. You pursue the interest of society as a whole. When everybody is doing better, we're all doing better. So you fit within these things rather than trying to bend them to your will. And you bring this attitude toward meditation as well. You stop trying to control the universe and you let the universe in. So this poem, which I will go through section by section, shows a kind of progression moving from that self-centered frame of mind to parental frame of mind. But the metaphor here is host and guest. So if you're a guest, you expect people to do things for you. If you're a guest in their home, they bring you dinner. If you're staying overnight, they give you a place to sleep. They anticipate your needs. They want you to indulge your needs. They want you to be happy. You want to be in that role. And this poem is about moving from being a guest in this world, from saying, world, what can you do for me? How can you make me be comfortable? To being a host in this world, saying, world, how can I help? How can I make this comfortable for others? How can I make everything flow together nicely? And this is a movement toward true bodhisattva practice, which is at the heart of Zen, Mahayana Zen teaching. So there are 4 stages, and the first one is on your program. I didn't think there was room to put all 4 on your program. The first one is the guest within the guest. The affair at the heart of a whole life knits up the eyebrows. Dust blown over the whole face, the temples have grayed. As always, departing from the gate without artifice, how can one continue on today's destitute road? So this one is about the self-centered view, the guest within the guest. I'm the guest, and in my inner life, there's just more guest. It's guest all the way down. No sign of the host here. And this corresponds to how we are before we come to spiritual practice. It begins, the affair at the heart of a whole life knits up the eyebrows. I like that. It's a good image of our daily, continuous, anxious life. Our eyebrows are knit up. We're worried. We can actually feel that. And it's not just the worries of the hour or the worries of the day. It is the affair at the heart of the whole life. It's everything from the existential to the mundane. It is dukkha, knits up our eyebrows. So do you ever notice your forehead as you go through your day? I think it would be a really good practice one day to all day notice your forehead and what's going on there. And are your eyebrows knit up? Is your forehead wrinkled? And then to consciously relax the muscles of your forehead and maybe your entire face and see what kind of effect that has on your spiritual well-being. Then it says, dust blown over the whole face, the temples have grayed. So you're dirty, you're defeated by life, you're getting older. Dust blown over the whole face. The dust may be a reference to Hui Neng and the mirror. We get dust on the mirror. The dust is obscuring our nature as host. Desire obscures our nature. As always, departing from the gate without artifice, how can one continue on today's destitute road? So there is no host here, and I said this is all about the self-centered view, but in these lines, I see an inkling of longing for the host. Or maybe we don't know what the host is yet, but we're longing for something. As always, departing from the gate without artifice, how can one continue on today's destitute road? So you depart from the gate of your protected realm, without artifice, without any mental tricks. Maybe you have those moments of pain and clarity. Maybe you wake up at 2 a.m. and you say, this just isn't sustainable anymore. Or you get really worn down today and you say, this is a mess. This road is destitute and I can't continue it. In a spiritual sense, you hit bottom. It's the dark night of the soul. And you think there must be something better. It's still a completely self-centered view, the guest within the guest, because it's entirely based on personal need. It's the ego wanting something better. So that's the first stage of practice. And by the way, when I talk about stages of practice, they're pretty fluid. Don't look too much for signposts or progression or neat categories, because you're going to move in and out of them all of the time. So yeah, the first stage, we come here motivated by need, many of us. We come here because we want to avoid what's bad. We want to avoid suffering. We want to embrace what's good. We want awakening or enlightenment. We want to develop good qualities. Not always. People don't always come here in a self-centered way. Some people come to Zen with completely altruistic motivations, and maybe that means they've already done a lot of spiritual work already, whether they call it that or not. And certainly everyone is a mix of motivations, somewhat self-centered, somewhat altruistic. But basically, at this first stage, we can see that our road is destitute, and we think we can get something from Zen to help us with that. We don't realize yet that what we need to give up is the needing. That's the Four Noble Truths. We need to get off that continuous hamster wheel of desire, fulfillment of desire, new desire. You fulfill one desire, a new one comes up. It never ends. It never ends. So you can't run faster on the wheel and think you're going to find happiness that way. You have to get off of the wheel. So the Zen practice that corresponds to this first phase is vow. I see that this hamster wheel existence is destitute, and I vow to seek a better way. I'm not sure what that way is, but I vow to be open-minded and to try to find that out. And vow can take many forms. It can be very personal. It can be in words. It can be in carefully written out words. It can be wordless. Vow can be in the way you hold your body. Vow can be in the way you hold your mind. There's something there. There's something there that I'm going to do. And maybe you don't give it words, but you feel it deeply. It's a kind of commitment. And if you want, there are many practices here at Zen Center that can help you with your vow. We recite the vows. We'll recite the Bodhisattva vows after this talk. In our services, sometimes we recite various vows, and we do that in a formal way. We do that by bowing while we're bowing all the way down on the floor, and that gets into the body, and it's memorable. We have our initiation process where people sew rakusus, and they take vows in front of the community. And it's saying, I want a better way. I'm tired of this brain dragging me around. Always a guest, never a host. Is that any way to live? So the second section is the host within the guest, and it reads like this. No longer yearning for commercial profits or abundant gold, evening comes to the ancient road and I ask for news of home. Hearing reports of my parents' health, I try to manage difficulties and balance minds, joy, and dread. No longer yearning for commercial profits or abundant gold, evening comes to the ancient road and I ask for news of home. Hearing reports of my parents' health, I try to manage difficulties and balance minds, joy, and dread. So this is about moving, beginning to move beyond that self-centered view. It's about the host within the guest. I'm still the guest, and the guest is running the show, but in my inner life, there is the host. I'm beginning to see that host, and I'm developing that host as a result of my vow. I'm maintaining an active spiritual practice. I can get in touch with that host. No longer yearning for commercial profits or abundant gold. So wow, we've moved pretty fast here. This is about cessation of desire. We are now off of that wheel. We're off of that wheel. But of course, this is a lifetime practice, and you never fully accomplish it all at once for all time. Evening comes to the ancient road, and I ask for news of home. I think this is wonderful, and it's pretty subtle. Evening comes to the ancient road. So the word road appears again. It's still the road of desire, but this time we're seeing it from another perspective. It's not the destitute road, but it's an ancient road. We see it now with some distance, and we see it's a road that others have walked before, and we're beginning to open up to the experience of others and not be so centered on our own experience. Evening comes to the ancient road, and I think that's about the meeting of light and dark. We can imagine that beautiful, soft evening light that we see sometimes here at the lake, where light and dark are both present. You're beginning to see both host and guest within yourself. You're beginning to be able to move between them a little bit. And so what do? You ask for news of home. You care about others. But it's also kind of tied up with your own security. It's about your home. It's not about everybody's home. I want to know about my home. Hearing reports of my parents' health, I try to manage difficulties and balance minds, joy, and dread. So you're considering the needs of others, and now you're looking for that other path. You want to take care of things. You want to balance joy and dread. You're learning what the practice is really about. You thought, when you came from this perspective of guest within the guest, that this practice would make you happy all the time. But now you're seeing, oh, it's about balance. It's about keeping things in balance. So this second section corresponds to the practice stage of doing the hard and consistent work of practice. It's about doing a lot of zazen. It's about doing mindful activity, coming to the temple, opening to the host within, developing the host, quieting the guest enough so that the host can begin to manifest itself. And then we get to the third section, the guest within the host. Up in the tower, a horn blows to the 6 bright streets. On a golden horse, the general leaves the imperial palace. Beyond the frontiers, his transformative power is sharply beneficial. Not harming anyone, he, let's say they, bring a peaceful age. Up in the tower, a horn blows to the 6 bright streets. On a golden horse, the general leaves the imperial palace. Beyond the frontiers, their transformative power is sharply beneficial. Not harming anyone, they bring a peaceful age. So again, we're moving pretty fast. This is about having now moved beyond the self-centered view. It's about the guest within the host. I'm the host now, and within my inner life, I know the guest is there and I can still access the guest. So this is a big fundamental shift. Originally, we were the guest, and that was that world, our world, and we could begin to see how the host was contained within the guest. But this is a total change of perspective, and now we're the host, and we can see the guest in there. I hope I said that correctly. But it's that enormous shift. The host is now running the show. And this is something that can happen to us briefly for a little while. We realize that's going on. It's been happening to us our whole lives. It's not that unusual. But to really see it, that can be a little unusual. And sometimes it can happen in a pretty big way, where your fundamental perspective on the world has changed. And it's big. It brings tremendous energy and focus. Up in the tower, a horn blows to the 6 bright streets. That's probably an allusion to one or two things. I don't know what exactly, but we get it. With the host in charge, this little body, this little being becomes quite miraculous, not burdened by the needs of the guest all the time. Being the host, you can move around and you can do stuff. On a golden horse, the general leaves the imperial palace. So the practitioner goes forth to do good in the world, no longer constrained by self-interest. Beyond the frontiers, their transformative power is sharply beneficial. Not harming anyone, they bring a peaceful age. So this is an image of a strong, unconstrained, powerful bodhisattva. And this corresponds to the practice stage of service. The host has arrived. We are host to the world. We find ways to help. We help those around us. We help those around us simply by not being a needy guest. And there are many ways to serve, as you know, as you do in your community. and at Zen Center. You can show up in a good way. You can take volunteer jobs. A few people devote their life to service through ordination. So this stage may sound like the ideal, or at least it's what we pictured as the ideal back when we were the guest within the guest, because here we are on our golden horse, spreading joy everywhere. But what does that golden horse sound like? It sounds a little bit like the fulfillment of desire, doesn't it? We desire to be this really strong figure. So we are still at this stage carrying that guest inside. Our guest inside is aware that it's on a golden horse and gets some satisfaction from that. And in a sense, we haven't moved that far from being the guest within the guest. There is still this vestige of wanting. There is still this idea of me as the great savior and the great helper. So there has to be a fourth stage. And the fourth stage is the host within the host. Without disturbing the golden sun, 10,000 virtues are perfected. The palace moss, without design, contains the moon. Above all, avoid speaking the forbidden name of the emperor. Who would presume even once to offend the sage's countenance? Without disturbing the golden sun, 10,000 virtues are perfected. The palace moss, without design, contains the moon. Above all, avoid speaking the forbidden name of the emperor. Who would presume even once to offend the sage's countenance? So this is about having moved completely beyond that self-centered view. Host within the host, no trace of the guest remains. I'm the host, and in my inner life, there's just more host, and I am free. Without disturbing the golden sun, 10,000 virtues are perfected. So this is the third time the word gold or golden has appeared. So I think in this poem, gold represents what is most valuable to us. First, we gave up the need for abundant gold. We gave up our desire. Then we were astride our golden horse. We had everything we could desire, but now we have the golden sun. It is the universe itself that is that beautiful, dynamic, wonderful thing. The most valuable and wonderful thing is outside of us. Gold is not about us at all. And we are going toward it without disturbing it. Because we're not a guest, we don't need anything from it. We are hosting the sun. The sun is hosting us. The universe is not disturbed by need. All is in harmony, and the mind is quiet. The palace moss, without design, contains the moon. Without design is like no artifice. This is effortless. All things contain all other things because the universe is in harmony. The moss contains the moon contains the moss. Above all, avoid speaking the forbidden name of the emperor. Throughout this poem, there's been a theme of the imperial palace. I think this part means because we're at the stage of the host within the host, we simply can't allow the guest to make an appearance. Just don't do it. You've gotten here, don't do it. We can't name things. We can't bring in our needs and desires at this point. That would be disastrous. One woo-hoo at the end of the 7-day retreat, and it's all gone, right? So they are exhorting us, do not lose it. Do not lose it. It is so subtle. And the Xin Xin Ming says, but even slight distinctions made set earth and heaven far apart. So the poem ends, who would presume even once to offend the sage's countenance? So it ends with this exhortation. Be so careful. Do not even once ever in your life mess up now that you have found it. Because the practice that corresponds to the host within the host is flow. You just let it come, and it comes easily, as long as you don't get off track. But I think, who would presume even once to offend the sage? Sounds a little militant, don't you? Doesn't that sound a little impossible? We find these exhortations a million times in Zen, and actually, I don't think they're very helpful. I think they set up standards that can kind of mess us up. So instead of saying, don't blow it, I would prefer to say, when you blow it, as you inevitably will, please forgive yourself and come back to the practice. Come back to working toward parental mind. So this exhortation about the high standards and always being perfect, about the dangers of falling out of your designated role, makes me think of a little something that happened with my grandson recently, my grandson Louis. Twice in the past week, he said the same thing that really kind of startled me. And these were both times, I don't remember exactly the circumstances, but these were both times when I was kind of worn out. You know, it takes a lot of energy to be with a 4-year-old all day. And he doesn't always take a nap anymore, but I still take a nap. So there's some tension there. And twice in the past week, I just said something like, I can't do that. I can't do this. I'm tired. I can't do this. And here's what he said in response. He said, but you're Papa. He calls me Papa. And oh my goodness. Like, he's saying, like, it's not within the realm of possibility that you could ever falter in your role as Papa. And I think that's amazing. This little 4-year-old is reminding me that I'm the host and I can't be a guest. And it took me aback because it kind of breaks my heart to think that I might ever falter or I might ever let him down. And I think all parents and all grandparents feel that. What if sometime I'm not able to rise to the occasion? So I get the exhortation, and I get the urge to make a vow, an ironclad vow, never to be broken, that I shall always be perfect my whole life long, because it matters so much. But I also know reality, and I know how things work, and I know that people are imperfect. I know how aging works. I know that someday I'm likely to be the guest of my own children, of my own grandchildren. And that's how it works. So we have to build some forgiveness into this model and some care for ourselves. It can't be this strict hierarchy where you achieve the 4th level and you never go back. And you vow that, you know, you will maintain, you will never break. Because if we say that, if we have that kind of a standard for ourselves, we're just building a new hamster wheel to replace the old one. And this is a hamster wheel that is guaranteed to exhaust us. So we accept that we're imperfect beings. And no matter how advanced our practice, we're not going to dwell 100% of the time as the host within the host. We have to take care of those other 3 stages as well. And I wanted to tell you this because I don't want to give you the false hope that you will someday dwell exclusively as host and never have any problems anymore. It doesn't work that way. We move between these, and it's how we take care of each one while we're in it that matters. When we're the guest within the guest, we practice vow. When we're the host within the guest, we do lots of zazen. When we're the guest within the host, we serve others while trying not to get too hung up on that image of ourselves on the golden horse. And when we're the host within the host, we go with the flow. So it's not about getting somewhere, it's about being where you are, doing the appropriate practice at the appropriate time. And yes, there is a progression in a sense, because over time we begin to see these stages and develop our ability to move from one to the other. But in a sense, there's no progression because we're never going to abandon any previous phase completely. So just as a little postscript here, I can already see Louis beginning to kind of move through this host-guest awareness even at this age. We came up with a game also in just the past week where we, I don't know how it started, but we kind of pretend to be each other. I pretend to be Louis and he pretends to be Papa. And he says, "Be me." And I say, "I want candy." And the first time I did that, I could just see his little mind working, and he goes, "No, you can't have candy. Candy is not good for you." So he's moving into that host. He's moving into that host mentality. He can find it there. And we did that a couple of times. Then I asked him again, you know, and he says, "Be me." And I said, "I want candy. I want ice cream." And he says, "Yeah, you can have candy. You can have ice cream." So the guest is kind of coming back in, you know, and he wants to kind of manipulate the system here. So, yeah, so, you know, infants are all about needs, and 4-year-olds are mostly about needs, but you can also see the host, the nascent host within them. And it's a beautiful thing to see. Usually he's the guest within the guest. Sometimes he's the host within the guest. We certainly cultivate that feeling of empathy, and it's a beautiful thing. And sometimes I think already he's the guest within the host, because human compassion and empathy is a very, very strong and deep thing. And I am grateful for that. And that's what I have to say this morning. So thank you so much for listening. And we have a few minutes here if anyone would like to comment or maybe ask a question. Please feel free to do so, including the folks online. Yes?
I would like to say that in the last week, I felt like it was the strongest feeling of being a host that I've had for years.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's daughter visited us with her boyfriend, and they're planning on getting married. The focus of every day was on them. So I felt fulfilled. This morning, I read the news that Trump caved into Putin without asking for a ceasefire. And I feel like I want to do something. And there's not going to be a protest today, as far as I can tell. I mean, it's going to take a long time, if ever, to counteract what has happened. And I'm afraid for the Ukrainians I've talked to, some of whom are from Ukraine, over Zoom meetings. It's devastating to have like a rupture of your hostness.
Yeah, I saw that too. Trump caved into Putin, and that's a very difficult thing. And right, as you said, kind of repeating this in case some folks online couldn't hear this, but you're not quite sure what to do. There's probably not a protest today. I'm sure there will be one down the line that we can all go to. Now, I shouldn't say that because it's up to every individual what they would like to do, but I guess I'm offering a little encouragement there. But yeah, it's hard to know what to do. I think we can continue to be the host in our own lives. That's what we can do. We can't control other people. So thank you for that observation.
I'm glad you just said what you did, because I don't every day take care of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to take care of ourselves. That's a pretty strong message that you're going to hear from here from time to time. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
The phrase that kept coming up for me as you were talking about guest and host so extensively is the line from the song of the grassroots hermitage, who would proudly arrange seats trying to entice guests.
Uh-huh.
And I've always heard that line and thought, oh, that's a good, like, maybe rebuke for myself to not talk about Zen with people who aren't interested.
Mm-hmm.
But in this sort of inner host, inner guest conversation, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I know exactly what it means, but it just seems like there's maybe something cool about saying, like, if there's a guest here and there's a host here, like, there's no need to try to turn the guest into something it's not, or entice it to go somewhere else, right? I don't know. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
does
But is that a little bit like the golden horse?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, here I am on my golden horse. Yeah. Yeah, and we talk about that, when we talk about bodhisattvas, we'll often talk about how the bodhisattva acts without any division between helper and person who is helped. There's no idea that one is above another. We drop all of those ideas, and so yeah, and so if you are trying to entice guests, you're not really being generous. You're trying to kind of get something from them. And of course, in reality, it goes both ways. Guest and host, they really enjoy each other. But in this deeper spiritual sense, it's about really hosting without an expectation of something in return. Does that make sense? Yeah, thank you. Yes?
You mentioned at one point, like, forgiving yourself for dropping back the guest or whatnot.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness as the first noble truth of life is suffering, forgiving life for having suffering instead of making it not you have it, right? I'm wondering to what degree it's easier to drop like a host when you can forgive everything, other people, the moment, whatever it is, and then once you've forgiven everything, now it's easier to give your attention and love to it instead of holding you up against it.
Yeah, I think it's essential. I think if you're able to forgive others and forgive yourself, you have fewer preoccupations and it's easier to drop into host. But if you drop into host, it might also make it easier to forgive. You can do that. If you find yourself in a really self-centered place and you get tired of it, you can reach out to someone else and you can try to help someone else. And it actually will help to bring you out of yourself. So it kind of works both ways. Yeah, thank you. Yes?
Yeah, in that same line that you were just saying, my mother was in hospice a number of years ago, and she was dying, and I was kind of coordinating her care, and I noticed that I had to be really focused all the time on her rather than my own kind of needs, and that was very liberating in the sense that I didn't think about myself. I was kind of totally focused on her, and it was kind of like it was more attuned or whatever. Anyways, it was kind of like I couldn't think about my own kind of
Right. Right. It's very liberating to feel that, to put everything into the care of another person. But of course, that can go too far, right? As well, in that if you give so much that you're no longer taking care of yourself, then it's not beneficial for anyone. So that's something we have to be careful about as well. Many people sacrifice so much that they wear themselves out, and then they can't be helpful for others. So it's all a balance.
Yeah, it's a common thing, but I think a lot of caregivers, it happens to a lot of caregivers.
It is. Caregivers, especially people taking care of elderly parents, often are just It's very hard to find ways to care for themselves. So. Mhm. All right. Well, yes, one more comment. Cato.
There was a couple of questions. One was in the poem. How did that go?
Who would presume even once to offend the sage's countenance?
Okay, and then Adam just brought up who would probably arrange these, trying to place a guess. But when you read that question at first, the first thing that came up to me was, me. Answering the question, who would be it? I would.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, could you talk more about our roles of participation in questions, in being the host and the guest?
Ah. So you're asserting that, yeah, you would offend the sage's countenance.
Sometimes.
Sometimes you would. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. Because when I talk about some of the things I've talked about this morning, you know, we don't disturb the golden sun. We go with the flow. We don't try to fight the universe. We try to let the universe be what it is. It could be misconstrued to be a statement that we have to sort of yield to everything all of the time and be completely passive. And that's not correct, because to really take care of the universe, sometimes we have to be assertive. Sometimes we do have to offend the sage. And it's very important to remember that. Does that make sense? So yeah, and sometimes we have to be direct. Sometimes we have to say things that make people uncomfortable. Sometimes we have to learn to have difficult conversations. Sometimes we take to the streets. Yeah. Thank you. All right, let's end there and turn this over to our esteemed Do-an, who will tell us about